Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today. Hopefully we are right on time with you at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. My name is Matt Leshper with 1836 Realty and Property Management in beautiful Austin, Texas. And we've got one of my great colleagues and friends with us today, Pete Neubig. Pete is in Houston, Texas, and I'm going to give him a couple minutes in just a second to tell us about himself. Our topic today is multifamily investing, what not to do. So we get calls, both of us, from different clients, and everybody wants to know where to put their money. You know, do I put it in the stock market? Do I trust my financial advisor to just magically take care of my future because he took a 6-week class and now he's a rocket scientist? Do I invest in residential because I know residential? Oh, commercial sounds sexy. Everybody wants commercial, but it's $1 million to get in. So hopefully we're going to cover some of these questions for you today. My background is a real estate broker, professional real estate inspector, and I have at one time been licensed as a loan officer, but boy, a little bit of a different business there. And then the government got involved, and I decided that was a good time for me to get out. So currently, we practice, I think Pete and myself both, as real estate brokers, respectively in Austin and Houston. We manage real estate assets for people around the world, but in our respective cities. And we get calls all the time, what to do, how to do it, and where to put their money. So clients really want to know, what should they expect? What is safe? What is risky? And I think more than anything else, our job is to tell them what not to do, because everyone reads books and hears about how you can get all these things for free, and anything for free is probably too good to be true. If everyone was getting rich in real estate or in any aspect of investing, then everybody would jump in and it would all balance out. So back to the topic today, multifamily investing. Pete, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company so that our viewers today can get to know you.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. So my name is Pete Neubig, originally from New York, but I've been in Houston, Texas for the last 25 years. I'm a broker, and we manage properties. I got into property management through, and we manage single family homes. And I do want to let everybody know that there is a big difference between a single family home and a multi-unit. And a multi-unit to me is 5 units or more, and a single family home is 1 through 4 units. So I like to make sure we have that definition set up, because I do get a lot of clients that ask, I want a multi-family, and then they want to buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, and that's not a multi-family. And so anyway, we manage a little over 800 homes here in Houston, and a few in Dallas, about 60 in Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I actually came, Matt, I don't even know if you know this about me, but I came into this business not as a realtor, but as an investor. So my business partner and I, Steve Rosenberg, we owned apartment complex together. I've owned apartment complex without Steve. And then Steve and I own about 35 single family homes together. And the reason why we ended up creating a management company is because we bought all of the wrong stuff. And so if you ever hear Steve or I speak, we really talk about what not to do. I believe in Tony Robbins, the modeling deal. So if you model what I did, you're gonna go down the same path I went down, which means I basically took a wrong detour for a long time before I got back on track to wealth and prosperity. And so why I decided to come on with your show here is to talk a little bit about what I did wrong on multifamily and why I don't like multifamily and why I love single family. And because I made mistakes in both. The single family mistakes is tens of thousands of dollars. The multifamily mistakes is millions of dollars. It could be millions of dollars. And maybe we talk about this story later on, but I was sued by the bank for $1.5 million at one point on a multifamily deal. So you're playing a different board game with a lot more zeros. And if you don't have the deep pockets for those zeros, the mistakes you make on multifamily could literally bankrupt you. Matter of fact, one of the business partners on that deal went bankrupt. They had to declare bankruptcy. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. And if you do have assets in Houston or Dallas-Fort Worth, we'd love to help you out. And we do a 30-minute free sit down with any investor that wants to talk through some of these challenges of, do I buy multifamily, single family, or what type of home should I buy?
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks for that, Pete. So our agenda today, we're going to try to go through some questions that we think will be very valuable to the user. to the viewer, and then we'll leave some time at the end. We will definitely finish before 12:30. Hopefully we can wrap up our set of questions and answers that we have already written down by about noon, and keep you guys on track. So if you have anything at the end of this you want to follow up with that we don't touch upon, feel free to put it into the chat window, ask a question, whatever is helpful for you guys, because we want you as the viewer to really get something beneficial out of this. We see each other all the time, and we like seeing each other and having lunch, but really we're here for you today. So if you have any questions or concerns and we don't touch upon those, please let us know. That's what we're here for. So the big one we're going to touch on first is cap rate. When you get into reading some textbooks, or I actually know some people who invest and they just buy and sell apartment complexes as if it's buying and selling a car. And they just keep saying cap rate. Oh, I just look at the cap rate like it's this magical ball that they can peer into, and everything becomes evident if you just look at that one number. Pete, what's your experience been with shopping by cap rate? Is that kind of the price tag tells all?
So the higher the cap rate, the higher the return in theory, right? And typically, in my experience, has been the higher the cap rate, the lower barrier to entry, and the lower the price point is of the property typically. And typically, what that means, it's a lower class property. So again, for your viewers, each property is labeled either a Class A, B, C, or D, and a Class A property is going to give you the lowest cap rate. So it's maybe a 1 cap, maybe a 2 cap. It's going to be something that's pretty new in a nice area. People that are single professionals or families that are white collar professionals are going to go live there. There's going to be a lot of amenities, and that's going to be a 1 cap. As you go through the cap rates, the higher the cap rate, the lower the class building. So a Class B is, again, it's going to be an older building in a nice area. In Houston, it's the Galleria area. In Austin, it might be maybe some of the suburbs or right on the outskirts of a decent part of downtown. A Class C is going to be an older building in a blue-collar area. So basically what's happening is you're going to get it's less amenities in the older apartments. And with that, you get you get people that don't make as much money. So your rents are a little bit less, and you get people that maybe their credit's not as good. So think of just A, B, C, and D, and just think of your credit going downwards. Think of the age of the property going down, and then just think of the amenities going down. So a Class D is typically going to be an older property in a neighborhood that is it's not a good neighborhood. It's not a lot of good credit. Maybe crime is pretty high there, and school systems are pretty bad there. So if you see something that's a high cap rate, and I'm sorry, Matt, I haven't followed this year, so I don't know. When I was buying apartments back 10 years ago, I can tell you and a B class would produce about a 4 or 5 cap rate. Now it might be a little bit lower, might be a little bit higher. And a D class property is producing anywhere over an 8 to a 10 to whatever, greater than 10 cap. And unfortunately for me, I was buying based on cap rate. It's the equivalent of buying single family homes based on cash flow.
So the definition of cap rate, though, really doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't have a portion of that definition which is correlated to quality. It's really supposed to be about return on the money. Is that correct? As far as the true definition. But your findings through experience is that return is not just by luck or chance. It's really correlated to the structure, the age, the quality of the tenants, the probability that you're going to collect rent or not collect rent, the probability that the roof's going to cave in or last you 30 years. There is something more to it that you're seeing.
Absolutely. As you know, this is we as investors typically buy stuff based on Excel spreadsheets, right? And then we may go and we may look at the property, right? A few of us may actually go and look at the property, but at the end of the day, we're buying it's a people business, and so and those people, you can't control what people do, right? You can't control if they're going to pay their rent, if they're not going to pay their rent. You can't control if they're going to bring what kind of clientele comes into your apartment. So when you look at the bottom right hand corner on your spreadsheet, you see that cap rate is 10%, and that's based on it's based on your return, based on how much money your down payment, and you say, okay, this cap rate is really good. It's a great return. I'm going to go ahead and invest in it. And then you realize, well, again, Matt, the property has lots of deferred maintenance, or it's just old and it's going to need more maintenance care, or the tenants are not screened correctly, or even if you screen them, you're in such a tough area that you have to take people with no credit or bad credit. And so can I go on with one quick story?
Absolutely, please.
So I bought this 52-unit apartment complex. It was a 12 cap. It was about $988,000. It was 26 duplexes, 52 units, $375 rent range was on there. We believe the pro forma, meaning what we can get it to, we believe that we can get the apartments to about $575 in rent, which would then almost double our cap rate, right? Which almost would double the amount of of money that we could make. And so we actually had monies that we put about $25,000, $30,000 into the units, and we had this plan. Well, even though we got the units up to the $500, we never got the return on our investment because the eviction rate was like 30%. I had prostitution in there. I had gangs in there. I had people stealing electric meters. I had people running electric cords from one unit across the courtyard to another unit. I had a gun drawn on me once. Funny story. He wasn't drawn on me. He just was drawing a gun, and I happened to be close by. And so you have to think of these things when you're buying these Class D apartment complexes. And for anybody who is just looking at return and just looking at cash flow, no matter whether it's a single-family home or a low-income multi-unit, you have lots of other challenges that you have to factor in on your cash flow. Like when people start stealing your electric, when people start stealing your appliances, when you have to cage everything, you have to bar everything that was not part of your initial plan, right? Because I didn't plan on putting burglar bars on all the doors, but guess what I had to do, right? And so that was, $30,000 that we didn't anticipate. And so there's a lot of things that you don't anticipate, and of course that's, if you don't have deep pockets when you buy the property. So for example, when you buy the property and you say, well, I'm going to use the cash flow to invest back into the property, if you don't get that cash flow because your eviction rate's at 30% and your delinquent rate is high, and you can't increase the rents, now all of a sudden you can't make the capital improvements needed to get the cash flow up because I can't do the improvements to increase the rents. So it becomes this big cycle, and it becomes cyclical, and you start just going down this path that you really don't want to go down. Then what happens is you have to make a cash call. And I can tell you, if you want to see a partnership fail, you start making cash calls.
So I got a question for you that kind of takes off of this same purchase process, and when you say pro forma, looking at the future, all that. Most apartment complexes that I've seen that come on the market, or multifamilies on a larger scale, all have the set of books. And they go, well, here is our Excel spreadsheet on how well this is performing. How accurate do you find those across the board? Because you're looking at people who are either independent management companies or owners who just happen to say this is what their books are, but really do business in cash. What has your experience been?
So my experience is, as you get closer to those 1 cap and 2 caps, the professionally run buildings, the numbers are very good. I could honestly, I only know people who've done due diligence on those type of properties. I never had the cash to buy those properties. Okay, now on the Class C and Class D properties, the ones that are mom and pop managed, the ones that are owned by somebody, they have no numbers. They have no books, and due diligence is ridiculous. I mean, they barely have leases. I've done walkthroughs where they had a lease on a property and it was vacant. They didn't realize it. If it's the better it's managed, the more money you can make. Because if you're the buyer and it's managed poorly and you don't have the documentation and your numbers aren't right, I'm going to negotiate much better, right, as the buyer.
So no different than having independent accountants look over your business so that you can certify your books and say, look, this is the truth. Independent person can verify that, they're licensed and such. You're saying that having a management company deliver those is of value to the sellers, to the owners, not just to the buyers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in multifamily.
So let's talk about something you touched on next, which is the partnerships. You said you went into these not alone because honestly, I mean, I guess if you got deep enough pockets, but who wants to go into a few $1 million by themselves when you could diversify and in theory not take as big a lumps if something goes wrong? So what was your experience with partnerships with people?
So I've had good and I've had bad. And then I had another business partner where he had 26 partners and they were all suing him. You have one bad apple, it spoils the bunch. So let me tell you a little bit about how this was working. I don't know if it still works this way, but this is how I was doing it. So I was a passive investor and I was a lead investor and I was also a team of lead investors. So I have done 3 different types of structures for partnerships. So the first one is a passive investor. Matt, you say, I got a deal, Pete, and I need X dollars to go ahead and make this deal happen. Pete says, no problem, Matt. I'll write you a check. I got a bunch of 401k money, IRA money, or I just got a ton of money and I need to place it. So I give it to you, right? The problem is I just met Matt at some investment group 2 weeks ago and we just had lunch and I hand him over $80,000 or $150,000, right? I akin to partnerships in real estate like dating somebody for one date and then marrying them for the next 5 years, right? So now Matt and I are stuck with one another. Then what happens is the passive investor, he needs his money somehow. Something happens, life gets in the way, got divorced, and now he's struggling and he needs, Matt, I need distribution. I need distribution. And then it forces the lead partner to maybe break some of the rules his investment rules that he did. Maybe he's running the property a little bit differently because he's trying to get some money out to pay the investor that's really causing the problem. By the way, it's always the investor that gives you the least amount of money that causes you the most problems. You know that, all right? So I was a passive investor on a deal, and my deal with the lead partner was I'll give you money, I'll even get you another investor, but I want to come down, I want to work for free. Great deal for him, right? But I want to learn the business. So the next deal I did was with 2 other gentlemen. So the 3 of us, we created an LP. Then we created an LLC, and then we all got investors into the LLC, and then the LP was part of the LLC. If that makes any sense. And the 3 of us each had one guy was in charge of rehabbing the project, one guy was in charge of getting the financing, and I was actually in charge of running and managing the property. This is the 26 duplexes that I was talking about earlier. And so that partnership actually worked out okay. We didn't make money on the deal. As a matter of fact, when we had to make cash calls, the big challenge of that partnership was, although we all got along, but when we made a cash call per the partnership agreement, 2 of the guys never made any cash. They never made the call.
Wow.
So if the project needs, let's just say $50,000 to do something, and 2 out of the 3 partners decide not to put any money in, what is that going to do to the project? Right. So then what are you going to do now? Are you going to then go ahead and get your lawyer and send them a strongly worded email? Do you then sue them for non-performance?
But they don't have the money anyway, so
yeah. So then then you have to sell more shares, and when the project doesn't perform, it really kills partnerships. Funny thing is, I had a buddy of mine, his properties actually were producing, but there was one investor that wanted more money and felt that the lead investor was making too much. So that person poisoned the rest of the people, and they actually forced a sale of a property that was the project was supposed to be a 10-year project, and they sold in like 3 years.
Wow!
So they didn't make as much money as they could have, and that was a project that was working well. The last project I did, I was the sole lead partner. The way it works typically is the lead partner doesn't put in any money, and he gets a percentage of the deal. And he typically will give out 80% of the deal. So now I go get Matt, I go get Steve, and I go get Phil. Matt, Steve, and Phil give me a bunch of money, and now the 4 of us are partner. Matt, Steve, and Phil own X percent based on how much money they gave us. So if they all gave the same amount, they all have equal share of 80%. So whatever that math equals. And then
Right.
Pete has 20%. And then Pete is actually the management company running the business. And then Pete actually gets a management fee for running the business. Pete's not the manager. He hires the manager. He hires the staff. But it's his systems. It's his books. He's in charge of all of that. And he has to then give reports, monthly and quarterly reports to the partners. Now that one worked well because we sold that property was a 3-year project. And you notice I'm telling you when these projects are supposed to be sold and bought and all that stuff. So every project that you buy, you always have to have an out clause. When are we selling? What is the life of this project? Right? Now, it can be that you want to keep it forever, but you should always buy when you're going to sell, right? How do we get out of this project? So that project worked well, and that's the one out of the 3 deals that I actually made money on. We sold it 3 years later to a church that was next door to us. They needed to expand, and so of course I had to be the bad guy and evict all the tenants out of that property. But the church got what they wanted, which was a parking lot. But that one worked out, and all the partners made money, and that was a good deal because I had good partners that they didn't need the money to live off of. As soon as somebody needs the money to live off of, it kills your partnership.
No, there's no way that works. You've got to be able to do this as an investment, not as your bread and butter.
Exactly. So when you're looking at partners, don't just do the lunch thing and then get the money. I would highly recommend, if I would do it all over again, I would highly recommend, finding out more about the partner. Let's say I take on Matt. Is Matt married? Yes, Matt's married with a wife. Is his wife involved in this as well? If not, I don't know if I want Matt, because it's good. You have to have the husband and wife both have to be involved in the decision. Does Matt have a drug problem? Does Matt have a drinking problem? Does Matt have a credit card problem? I would literally run credit checks and criminal checks on my partners next time I did this.
And a lot of people's lives ebb and flow too. So you could have somebody who's in the chips today, but their history has been up and down. And if you don't know them for long enough to know that history, you may have caught them at the high tide, and it may flow out one day.
Absolutely. And so that's why I'm saying you want to do your due diligence on partners. You want to know them. You want to go out with them. See how they treat people. See how they treat the wait staff. Make sure the wife is involved. Find out where they're getting their money from. Like, how are you getting your money from? If they're going to empty their bank account, I'll give you an example. We had one partner in that first deal we did. You know how they got their money to invest in the apartment complex? They used all their credit cards. They maxed out every one of their credit cards.
Recipe for disaster.
Looking back, we should never have taken them on as a partner, because guess what? As soon as the cash call came, they were tapped out. We couldn't keep
it's really not fair to them if you're not able to help and ask those questions to keep them safe, because you would have told that person, don't do it. And I really feel like the people that get defensive are the ones that have something to be concerned about or to hide. Because if you say, hey, I'm not trying to pry, but I want to make sure this is going to be healthy for you. Do you mind if I ask, or is this like family money? Did you earn it and it's your life savings? Is it credit cards? I want to make sure it works for you.
It's better to have those difficult conversations on the front end. The challenge is, as a lead investor, you want the money, you need the money, you may have a deal. So it's like anything in life. If you kind of skirt past some things, it comes back to haunt you. So having those tough questions and saying, it's hard to sit down with somebody and say, hey, you're going to hand me over a check for $100,000, but I still want to run your credit and background on you. You guys got more money than me. I'm the lead partner with no money. I can't rub two nickels together to get this thing to going. So
it is, but having those conversations and being very candid is something that I don't think enough people do to care for others. It's not about being selfish because you're trying to pry. It's about doing your diligence so that it works for everybody, because you've got other partners to protect, not just yourself.
It's kind of like your business, right? At 1836, you don't do what's best for Matt. You do what's best for the business.
You have to.
And so when you're buying an apartment complex and you're taking on partners, that's the business, right? The LLC that's buying, that's the business. You have to do what's best for the business. And what's best for the business might not take the guy with all the money.
Right.
It just might not. And so, it's hard to do, but the more diligent, it's kind of like when we take on tenants, right? When we take on a tenant, we're doing all this screening. Why? Because we want the back end to be nice and smooth, right? And it's the same thing when you take on partners. You have to do all this screening because you want the backside to be smooth. Because you have one bad partner, the deal goes from being a good deal to being a horrible deal.
Yeah, agree completely. All right, so next question we have related to multifamily is on-site staff. So I think a lot of people get into these. First off, the average investor is not going to go into a 500-unit complex because the numbers are too big, the down payment's too big. So people get a handful of single families, or they get a little bit of family money, and they go, hey, if 5 single families are great, then 20 units in a multifamily, the book I read says it's cheaper. There's only one roof. There's only one of these. I'm not having to deal with all that. So I want to go into multifamily, and they usually end up in this box somewhere between 5 and I'll just say 36 units, somewhere in there, because it's a palatable price point and all that. But then somebody has to manage those units, and they have a full-time job, a wife, kids, or should I say a spouse, kids. So their plate's full, but now I've got 25 tenants.
They got tenants. They got maintenance calls. They got issues with each other.
So talk to me about on-site staff. What do you recommend for people that are in that box? Because I think most of our people today are probably close to that box.
So I'm gonna speak on Houston because that's what I know. All right.
Perfect.
So I don't know Austin all that well yet, and so this may be a little bit different for Austin, but the concept is going to be the same. So bear with me. Okay. So the economies of scale of being able to get enough cash flow to pay for on-site staff starts at around 50 units. Okay. So if you are going to buy multifamily, you're better off buying a 50 unit than a 35 unit, because the 50 unit, you're going to at least have at least one person on site, whether a manager / maintenance guy or a maintenance person, whatever. You're going to have one person that you'll be able to employ and be on staff. Okay. So I highly, highly recommend having on-staff people. Now so let's think about this. Okay. So you're talking about from 5 units to, let's call it 50 units. Okay. From 5 to 50 units in Houston, I can tell you that no one is building 5 to 50 units in the last 25 years.
Agreed.
Okay. Maybe it's the same as Austin. So that means is that's already put you at a property that's 30 years old, minimum.
Or a lack of supply, therefore the demand for those is increased.
Or say that again, a lack of supply
lack of supply. They haven't built them in 25 years, and there's a block of people that's their entry level, and so they're all kind of fighting over the 5 that are on the market, whether they're good, bad, or ugly.
You're talking about investors, not renters. Okay, so yes, that could be. Now I stay away from them. I would never buy another. I bought a 32 unit and a 52 unit, and I wouldn't buy another small unit apartment complex. And here's why: the 32 unit. I'm sorry, this is 39 unit. So when you buy these small units, I don't have anybody on staff, right? So that means who's got to manage it? I got to manage it. Who's doing the accounting? I got to do the accounting. Who's got to do the maintenance? I got to do all the maintenance coordination. So what typically most people do is they say, well, Janetta, she's been in unit 15 for 25 years.
She knows everything.
I'm going to have Janetta be the on-site manager.
With no experience, no desire to have the job.
No experience. So all Janetta does is collect maintenance tickets and collect, collect rent. And all of a sudden, rent disappears. All of a sudden, Janetta has a boyfriend or a husband that's going to go out and do the maintenance. And then you need a Home Depot card. And it just becomes one thing after the other. And they're very difficult to manage. The building.
Not to mention she's living in one of your units. So if you fire her, she's going to poison the rest of the crate.
Exactly. And so the other thing is, again, in Houston, your quality of tenant goes like, your A, B, C, and D. Well, guess who lives in these 20-unit apartment complexes with no amenities? Your D paper folks, right? And so D paper folks, they don't abide by the lease. They typically don't. They typically have one job to the next. They're harder living on your apartment complex, and we know this as management companies. I mean, you hate D clientele because it's like, why even try to manage this thing? I can't enforce the lease, so you're just evicting people left and right, or you're not enforcing late fees on this guy, but you're enforcing late fees on the other guy because he pays them, which is against fair housing. right? So you just run this thing like, just however you can to survive, really. And so what I found is because the properties are older, because there's no amenities, because the properties are older, you have to pay. There's a lot more maintenance on it. Your maintenance costs are higher per square foot than your new properties. Makes sense. Because your properties are 20 units and no amenities, you get a lot lower class of clientele, which then increases your turnover. It increases your evictions. It increases your make-ready costs, which increase your maintenance costs, which increase your costs overall. So I'm a big fan of, at least if you have somebody who is going to be on site with I'm talking about an on-site unit, not somebody who lives there. At 50 doors, you have a unit and you convert it to an office, which is hard to do, but because you're like, well, that unit could have rented for $900. Now I'm losing the rent on that. But by having that person drive to work every day, and go there, they're not quote unquote poisoned, as you said, by the tenants, by the people who live there. Because a lot of times the manager ends up, taking the tenant side instead of the owner side, instead of the investor side. So once you have on-site manager, now after, I think if you get to 75 doors, you can then have a porter on site. Somebody can do small maintenance and do porter and things like that. And in 100 units, you have 2 people on site and maybe even a leasing agent. So you have a maintenance person, a manager, and maybe even a leasing agent.
I think the porter and the interaction of tenants is consistently overlooked. Someone has to pick up trash on that place all the time.
Absolutely.
Even if it's just tenants missing the dumpster and not caring enough to pick up their own trash. Visitors come by, drop off trash. There's constant something outside, whether it's a mattress from move out on the curb, which you get fined for by the city because they left it there. And then the interactions among people, lack of parking spaces, or you're in my spot, or there's just always some kind of controversy when you put that many humans together. And then if you go to that level of property, it escalates. So I really think those items are overlooked. Spectacular information on that topic. And I really think that people believe that some of these complexes manage themselves. Short story on us, and I won't drag this out to hit the next question, but we had a real estate agent who wanted to refer us about a 32-unit complex to manage 3238. And we went and took a look at it, and it was actually reasonable location, reasonable quality. The tenants looked stable. It wasn't bad. And so we're like, okay, well, we can manage it for you, but off site. Well, we told them what it was going to cost to manage it, and they're like, well, we're not paying that. Okay, well, that's a normal rate. It wasn't escalated for any reason, or there was nothing unusual about it. And they just said, well, that's fine, but we don't want to pay. So they got someone from their church to help them manage it, someone with no management experience, but they just happened to go to the same church. 6 months later, that agent's calling us because the owners are in another country, having a member of their church manage a 30-something unit complex in Austin. And the agent's like, can you help these people? And I'm like, well, I can help them, but they have to hire us. And now they have to hire attorneys to get them out of all the problems that they're in, because you don't know what you don't know if you're not in this business.
Right.
And it was quite a pickle. And I think they wanted to sell the place within a year because the lack of management, all they had to do was pay for it. And if those numbers didn't work on the front end, then they shouldn't have bought it.
Correct.
It wasn't that the manager was trying to abuse them. They require management. And if it's not a good buy, that's fine too, but then don't get into something with wishful thinking and not want to pay what it takes to either maintain the place, to have it managed, pay the taxes, pay the insurance. You're not going to get out of those things and pay them another year. They've got to be taken care of. So next question is, which do you like? What do you want to do in all this stuff? What do you see going forward as the way to go for multifamily investing?
Well, I'm out of it, Matt. I'm not getting back into multifamily investing. I've lost my life savings twice. I've lost my mom's money on a deal. So that's it. Once you lose mom's money, you're no good. So but I will say this. I did it incorrectly. I did it with low income, high cap rate, looking at the spreadsheet type stuff, and smaller properties. If I could do it all over again, if I chose to do it all over again, now for me personally, I buy single family homes, And I don't buy the low-income single-family homes. I buy good single-family homes. I don't care to get much equity. If I buy them at market rate, I'm okay because I'm a long-term holder. I'm buying stuff in good school districts. I'm buying stuff with HOAs, even though as a management company, I hate them. But I love them as well because they're making sure that my exterior looks good. And so I think in this business, it's hard to make money on the low income. There are certain people and certain systems that can make money. I found that I'm not that type of person, or I don't have those type of systems. And I think if you're going to hire a professional property manager, they're going to be very difficult for them to run low income properties successfully. And the other challenge with low income properties, whether it's single family or multifamily, is that your NOI doesn't really grow that much. If the rents are $375 and you think you can get $575, it's just not going to, and it can't support that, and you can only get $400. What is that? That's really not a lot of money on your NOI all of a sudden. So you really can't sell the property at a much greater value than what you bought it at a lot of times, because as you know, multifamily is not sold on comps; it's sold on NOI. But if I had somebody out there, we got a lot of people listening here, and they really want to get into multifamily, first thing is make sure you have good partners. Make sure you have enough money not just to buy the property, but you have 3 to 6 months of reserves, and buy a Class B property would be my thing. Buy something that's older, but it's in a good area. B and C. Stay away from the D stuff, and buy over 50 units. The bigger, the better. The more units you can get, the better. The more units you can get with the least amount of partners is probably the best solution.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Would you rather have 50 units by yourself or 100 with a partner? But I guess it depends on the partner.
It would depend on the partner. Yeah, and it would depend on the units. If everything was equal, I would do the units by myself.
Right.
So meaning like the class of the property is the same. If everything was the same, just different number of units, I would do the 50 by myself.
So last question, and I want to follow up about the word consortium, and I'll kind of get back into that and see if you've heard that term used. It's going to be something that's going to come up in our next webinar, and I want to get your take on it. It's like a partnership, but different. So let's talk about some of the hidden problems that people are going to find with multifamily, because you've still got a lot of people watching today who are like, you know what, these two guys, I hear them, that's been their experience, but it's not going to happen to me. I've read 3 books instead of 2. I have really great friends in some online forums, and we have a beer once a month, and everybody else is getting rich. And so, those rules don't apply to me, even though they have happened to other people. So what are some of the things that you've had come up that people may not think of when they start looking at the spreadsheet to purchase the property? Have you had any instances, events?
The one thing is 2 things: taxes and insurance. So the 52-unit apartment complex, when I first bought it, so by the way, that was a 3-year term. So we were supposed to sell in 3 years. When I owned it for 10 years, I knew something was wrong, right? Now, the big challenge with that property was it got rezoned, and all of a sudden I got forced-placed flood insurance on it.
Ooh.
And I then had to have a specific level of flood insurance on the property. And then our regular insurance went up. And there's that whole replacement cost versus repair cost. I'm not an insurance guy, I forget. But they had forced place where I had to do replacement cost. And I had no carpets. So anyway, long story short is the insurance they charged me was probably about $30,000 more than I really needed to be. And that's on a property that wasn't cash flowing that much as it was. So the insurance thing really hurt. The next thing was property taxes. When the county says, okay, Pete, your house property value has gone up and your taxes go up, I, Pete, can go into the office to the HCAT, Houston County Authority District, and I can fight that myself, or I can hire somebody to fight that and give them a percentage, right? Well, when you do it on a multifamily level, it's a little bit more complex. So what you have to do is then you really have to hire a professional. Now, when your property value goes up on your single-family home, it's based on appraised value, things that got sold. When your apartment complex goes up on appraised value, there is no rhyme or reason. I have not been able to figure out the formula on why it goes up and the amount that it goes up. I personally think that the taxing companies that fight the property tax, like O'Connor and Associates, and I'm just saying this for fun, but I personally think O'Connor and Associates and the authorities at HCAT are in cahoots with one another, and they just sit there in the bar drink and say, hey, that apartment complex, just add another $200,000 to that one. We'll fight it. We'll get it down. We'll get our paycheck, and I'll cut you back something next time we drink beer. Like, that's what I think. Like, and so those two things really, I mean, our valuation kept going up and up and up. And every time we'd fight it, it'd come down. And it goes up every year. Every time we'd fight it, come down. I had to scratch, the taxing people that fought it a huge amount of dollars. And so those two things really hurt our cash flow. And those are two things that I had no idea was about to happen to me when I bought these properties.
Well, because you're looking at fixed numbers. You're going, well, here's the income, and if everything stays equal, then this is great. Well, okay, threw in an extra 10% for maintenance. Yeah, but you're not controlling the county. You're not controlling changes in the environment like insurance. These are all things that are completely out of your control. And if you don't have the pockets to cover them, you're immediately in trouble.
Yeah, and I will say this. The other thing is everything gets a little bit more complex with multifamily. Single family just seems to be the KISS method. It's really simple. But the multifamily seems to get a little bit more complex from the numbers. They do accrual accounting, and so you have to kind of figure out really how they're hiding things, to the taxing, to the insurance. It just becomes a little bit more complex. And so
go ahead.
I'll just say it. So it just, you need to be aware of that as well.
Let's talk about the actual complex itself. We're still 5 to 50 units. What about notices? Giving notices to tenants. One of the things that we had a recent experience with, and I'll contribute with you on this just to make sure we hit some of these fun points that you and I have had experience with. One of the things we recently got touched upon was the EPA. They came and gave us a little in-person visit and talking to, and they told us they found us online. So they also said they found a few private landlords online that were not real compliant and that were not real kind to them, and they were personally going to have in-depth chats with them. So if you have a complex that's before 1978 and you want to do renovations on one unit, you have to notify every tenant in that complex of the renovations, of what's going on, of what precautions you're taking. Then you have to be lead-based certified, or your renovator does. You have to monitor all these things and make sure they're executed. That's multifamily. Single family, a little bit different story, but you're not having the complexity of notifying everybody. Parking. Have you had any experiences with parking problems on the multifamilies?
Yes. You had said that earlier, and I'm like, yeah, that's on my 52 unit, because we had so much vacancy a lot of times through the evictions and stuff, parking wasn't a problem. And then when we got everything, leased up, we were so excited because we actually had a good month. And next thing you know, man, we have fistfights outside, regarding parking because we didn't have enough spots. Parking is a pain in the butt.
Yeah. And then the handicap spots, you've got to have so many required. They have to be accessible, not just a spot. That means you're taking another spot out just to make it accessible. How many per unit? I don't think people account for that kind of stuff. The space in the parking lots. In Austin, we have, we're going to save the world in Austin through legislation. We've got the recycling ordinances, and half the legislation they pass in Austin gets kicked out when the legislator meets, but that's another story. So we got this legislation passed in Austin that you have to have so much cubic space per unit in a multifamily for recycling, and you have to then educate your tenants about recycling through various methods. So where are you supposed to put the new dumpster that you are now legally required to have on site? I mean, this is no joke. Like, you have to take a parking spot out where you were just one per unit. Which one of your tenants no longer gets a spot? And they're not going to help you. The city's not going to come in and help you restripe or asphalt that thing to tighten up the spots a little bit. It's just, they don't care. So that's one of the things we had. Common areas. What kind of experiences have you had with common areas in these multifamilies? Any problems?
Well, I'll tell you one story. We had the 39-unit apartment complex was in an area called Spring Branch in Houston. And this is one of those areas that was turning. It was becoming really a great area. Well, evidently, our complex was an eyesore, and the city really didn't want us there. Every other week, we had some kind of inspector at our property. I had the pool inspector, I had the fire marshal, I had the gas inspector, I had some kind of inspector, and guess what? I had the building occupancy inspector, and guess what? Every time they came, miraculously they found something. And we literally, every week, I have another violation that I have to deal with. Even though it was been like that for, 20 years. Matt, did I lose you?
Nope, I'm still with you.
Okay, sorry. So anyway, so we had a lot of issues. I guess I kind of tie this with the common areas, but we had a lot of issues with all of a sudden we're getting reg tagged on stuff that was like that for 20 years, and so when you finally get a nice deal in an area that's really coming up, it's hard to maintain it's hard to maintain and stay in the deal to get you out long term, because it's going to take you a few years to get the NOI and the appreciated value. Because now what happens is it's not really NOI selling on land value, right? Because somebody's going to want to buy that apartment complex, knock it down, and build single family homes or a bunch of duplex townhomes or something like that. And so you can really make a lot of money, but the government basically shut me down. So that's why I sold to the church as quick as I did on that deal, because I could have kept on that property and probably made a lot of money. But I mean, the boiler system, the stairs, the lighting, the pool, the way you look today. I mean, it was like they come in. There was guys from departments I've never heard of before.
So you and I are in the business, and I got to say, I feel like you and I are some of the more engaged people in the business. We care about what we do. We actively seek information. We're not sitting back just kind of showing up when we want. We care. I don't know how you feel, but I find it difficult for us to stay up on regulations that change constantly, because the city or the state or the county doesn't come to our office and go, hey guys, by the way, we passed a new ordinance and these are the things that you'll need to do. You have to seek these out and hope that you're getting the data you need, and that's our business. Do you find the same on your end?
I also find that you can't find the data. Sometimes tells you one thing, and then you go read it somewhere else, and it tells you something different. So you have
the departments are always kind of contradicting each other.
Yeah, you get contradicting or conflicting information. Also, we're licensed brokers, licensed realtors. And sometimes that stuff is buried in some email somewhere, and like, oh, we notified you. Yeah, in a 16-page notification thing, it was buried in there. So I don't know how to keep up on it. So I just use the method that I try to go out and learn as much as I can. I try to stay on top of it. I try to hire people that will stay on top of it. But more importantly, I try to use the what's the right thing to do method. What's the common sense method. Now, I will tell you this, my common sense in Austin, I don't think we share the same common sense.
It's a little different.
The Austin legislation, I mean.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's completely different. We've had repeated things come up that the city of Austin has passed, and then they've been struck down on one level or another. Either the legislature clarifies the law, or it's found to be against the state constitution, or whatever it may be. Everything from things that don't apply to us, like the plastic bag ban. We haven't used plastic bags in Austin in a handful of years. Another city sued and found out, I guess you can't outlaw plastic bags, but we're still not having them in Austin. And the recycling ordinances, hey, recycling is great. I would love for everybody to do it. But is it really my job as a property manager or an owner, landlord of a complex? Is it their job to, quote, educate tenants on that? That seems like more of a city service if you really want to educate the population. Why am I responsible for walking around or posting notices that meet your requirements?
I will say this too. As an investor of a multifamily apartment complex, what I found was that everybody thinks you're wealthy. And
absolutely,
listen, the people who buy these apartment complexes, especially the 40 to 50 to these units, they are not wealthy. They are hardworking people that have saved their money, that join forces together to pool the money in to basically live a dream. Okay, and the dream is ultimately retiring or whatever it is. Okay, that's the fact, Jack. All right, I know a lot of people that bought apartment complexes. Nobody is super wealthy. Now, some of them have used that vehicle to get there, but the majority do not even get there through apartment complexes. Now, here's the rub. First, the tenant thinks you're wealthy. So the tenant decides that he doesn't want to pay rent, or he's not going to follow the lease, or whatever, right? So the tenant thinks you're wealthy. Your property, your manager, on-site manager, those guys make like $25,000 a year. They don't make a lot of money. They think you're wealthy. So what happens is when the tenant pays cash, guess what happens?
You're not going to miss that money.
You're not going to miss that money. The maintenance guy thinks you're wealthy. So most of us give our maintenance guys a Home Depot card, right? And guess what happens? All of a sudden he buys a few things for his personal property to go put in. He buys, his Gatorades. Like, all this stuff has happened to me, by the way. So the taxing authority thinks you're wealthy, so they just pump up your taxes, right? The government thinks you're wealthy, so they're the ones that come over and start, citationing you. You have a bigger bullseye in your back with all these people than if you had a single-family property. And so all these people think you're wealthy, and they're all in your pocket in one way or the other. The tenant not paying rent, the manager, stealing time, the maintenance stealing stuff from in Home Depot, the taxing authority just increasing your value, and the city just, putting in new permits out of nowhere. Hey, I created a new permit. Here you go. Now you need this permit to do this. To do what? Well, if you want to turn your sprinklers on, you got to do something ridiculous. It's amazing the amount of stuff that get nickel and dimed because everybody thinks you're a wealthy landlord.
Agreed. So let me go ahead and let our viewers know about our next show. It's going to be September 5th, 11:30 a.m. And the next one we're going to be talking about is commercial investing. Pete, I don't know if you know Steve Fithian out of Fort Worth. He has SVN Trinity. That's his commercial enterprise, and he has Frontline Property Management. But one thing he does that I was going to, talk to you about and just see if you had heard of it is consortium. So again, September 5th, commercial investing is our next topic. 11:30 a.m., same thing. If you guys as viewers have any questions, feel free to put those out now. We're going to make sure we close out at 12:30, if not a couple minutes prior, if there's no questions, just to keep you guys on time. I know Pete's probably got his schedule top to bottom today, and so we're going to respect everybody's time. Consortiums is some word that I've heard thrown out in the commercial circles all over. And so finally, I'm like, well, maybe I'm the stupid one, So I'm going to have to Google this and see what Webster says about it. And the gist is, in application, it's a group of people who agree to put money in an investment, but the investment is pretty significant in size. So for an example would be a $20 million investment, and you go out to California and you try to get 20 investors to deliver $100,000 for the down payment, whatever it may be, but no one has any control over it except the property manager. It's a great deal for the broker because you get to get the buy side, future sell side, and the management side. The investors, I can't say it's a good deal or bad deal. I haven't had enough experience with it, but they typically will buy. I've honestly seen, like you're saying, the mid-size multifamily is very difficult and the single family are pretty easy. I'm seeing them buy like 50 single families now because it diversifies them so well and they're so much easier to manage. Even if you get one dog, you could sell it and the whole group stays together versus we've got one complex and we're all going to sink or swim on one ship. Have you heard of things like that in Houston? Do you guys deliver things like that, blocks of properties?
I have not. I mean, I've heard of it, but we have not had any experience with it. But I do know of a couple of people that, they go buy 100 properties, right? With other people's money. I find that in our experience, the money's coming from Asia. I mean, a lot of Chinese money here in Houston. And so
there's some in Austin too. I got to say, you're right. I see it increasing. The U.S. is so far a safe haven for everybody. So I think if they can get their money out to just a safe haven and invest it, a lot of these people aren't even looking at the numbers real close. They're just happy to have it out of their home country. Yeah.
And I will say this, kind of like with the apartment complex, those Class Class A properties, I mean, they're, 15, 20 million, $20 million. And those things, I mean, 1% return, they get them. And it's a lot easier property to manage and they go up in value. So maybe on some of these consortiums, they're buying, much bigger, nicer stuff. In this case, they're buying a bunch of single family homes, which would be great for our business as long as there's not specific reporting involved in that deal. So I know a lot of times you have groups that come in, you have to have a specific reporting for them, and have to do it certain ways. And next thing you know, you drive by the house 14 times in a day. It's like, yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah, it doesn't work financially for us, which makes it not work for them. But so let's kind of wrap it up. I don't see anybody posting any questions that they want followed up on. I think we did a good job covering a lot of topics. If you could do one thing differently, Pete, what would you do knowing what you know now, having been over a decade down the road?
Yeah, Matt, I would have stopped. I would have not have bought so many low-income properties, multifamily or single family. I would have, instead of buying 35 single family, I would have bought 15 Class B properties. So that'd be my biggest thing, is I would have bought differently. And I wouldn't have focused so much on cash flow versus on appreciation.
On quality. Look down the road instead of looking at today.
Correct.
So I think I said at the beginning, I'll say it again. Pete is a superb guy. I know what he does, not just what he presents. And anybody that's looking to invest in Houston, Empire, Empire Property Management, you have two names, one for the brokerage as well?
No, it's EmpireIndustriesLLC.com is the website, and everything's under Empire Industries right now.
Perfect. Well, if you guys are not familiar with Houston, I got to say, when I travel nationally to different cities, and Pete may feel the same, Austin and Houston seem like they are unbelievably insulated compared to everyone else's experience. I mean, whether it's the traffic, and that's an indication of the economy, whether it's the level of investment, whether it's the fact that you can get a job anytime you want. I mean, we can't hire people in Austin. There's no one left. So if you guys are considering somewhere to invest, even if you don't want to come to Austin because it's a little expensive, Houston has some brilliant areas. Pete is a superb person. I don't think he's out of the office anymore, putting his hands on properties or contracts, because he's got a big team of people to do that. But they're great people. He is as smart as they come. He's out there teaching people how to do this because he's at that level. So feel free. Is there a main phone number for you, Pete?
Yeah, they can call. Our main line is 888-866-6727. If they hit extension 1, it'll go to our pre-sales team, and they can ask for a 30-minute free consultation with either me or Steve, and they'll get over to me, and we'll set that up.
What's your podcast that you're working on that you guys are kicking out all the time now? Where can they find that?
We just started a new podcast. Yesterday was the first time we did it. It's called the Landlord Survival Show, and it's geared for the folks who are not using a property manager. We're not trying to get them to use property manager. What we're trying to do is teach them how to run their business a little bit more effectively and efficiently. And if they end up deciding they want to use property management, then hopefully they use somebody like you or us.
So is that where do they find that? Is it on iTunes, or where do they search for that?
Yeah, it's going to be on iTunes, and it's on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel, I believe.
Perfect.
And if you I see you put it out there, Landlord Survival Show. If you just Google it, you should find it.
Awesome. Pete, I can't say enough, good things about you. I just know you as a person, and I respect you as a colleague. Thank you for your time today. I hope people found it helpful. Again, Empire Industries LLC is in Houston, Texas. You guys are expanding to Dallas as well. So if anybody wants to look at the Dallas Metroplex, you'd be a good frame of reference or person of reference for them. You've got a team of people that know both marketplaces and can help them easily. Anything else you want to add before we close it out today?
No, I just thanks for having me, and appreciate. Hopefully, somebody gets something out of everything I did wrong, and we get one person to say, "I'm not doing that. I want to do a little bit better," and we help them out. And that's really the main thing.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for your time. If you guys have any questions, feel free to follow up with either Pete in Houston, Empire Industries, or us in Austin, 1836 Property Management. We're here to help you guys be successful. Just don't be too disappointed if we give you some honest truth and steer you away from things that you may have read in the textbook, because we really want you to be successful. We're not here to just take everybody that walks in the door and then have them disappointed down the road. We're going to be in this business a long time. So I don't think either of us wants to look a client in the face in 10 years and explain to them why it didn't work and they took our advice. So we're really in it for the long haul. We hope we can help you guys as well make a big success of this. And real estate investing is pretty great if you're just patient.
Time heals all wounds.
Yeah. Thanks for your time today. We'll catch you guys at the next Crowdcast, September 5th, and it's going to be about commercial real estate investing with Steve Fithian of Fort Worth. Have a great rest of the month and stay cool out there. It's hot.
See you, everybody. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Bye-bye.